Good morning again from beautiful Tennessee, folks. Man, I wish the YouTube experience could include, I could share with you the air temperature, the taste of the air, super crisp, not humid, not cold, the sound even, just the perfect ambient sound. It's 7:49 in the morning, Saturday, October 12th. I want to make a video for Sunday morning. Sunday morning seems to be the best time for publishing a video for me. Published a beautiful, just gorgeous video yesterday, Friday. Nobody saw it. You have to go check my Paradise video. Just absolutely gorgeous. Friday just doesn't work for me. I can make a review of releasing a brand new Legalis. If I publish it on Friday, it just doesn't work for me. However, I'm gonna fish here until 4 or 5 o'clock. When I get home, I'm gonna be very tired. The only way I can publish a video tomorrow morning is if we manage to make an uncut episode, so we just upload the whole thing and we don't mess around with editing. The thing is, I also want to go fishing tomorrow. Call me greedy, but I work hard for 5 days a week, Saturday and Sunday. I want to go fishing. I have a fishing business. Rarely both days are available for fishing. When they are, I want to go fishing. There's some big animal over there. That's a deer? No, that is not a deer. Is this a deer or coyote? No, it's got to be a deer. But why are they so small? Yeah, white-tailed deer. A bunch of them, but they're so small. I love deer. They're playing. Oh, they're playing. Look, can you guys see them? Gorgeous. I love deer. There is something very elegant to me. If you look at my jigs, my floats, my gloves, I would sacrifice everything for the beauty of the product. Well, it has to work good too, but I don't care for durability. And the way deer moves, the way it would jump over a little bush, the whole body with thin ankles like a race horse that they're playing over there. The way a deer jumps over a fence, it's so elegant. Something super elegant I find in deer. People tell me they're stupid, they jump in front of the roads. You can't change my mind. The way deer moves is incredibly elegant. What other animal moves so elegant? People love Alaskan bear. Bear is just a slob. The way it moves, just dragging its feet. Yuck. That's a cool story, bro. I thought I clicked on a fishing video. The title of this fishing video will be, that's the one thing I've decided, will be fishing with, don't worry, I parked properly, the sun will be in our back. I just want to show you what we have. The title will be fishing with the kitchen sink. And when I show you, you'll understand why. I have 2 floats here. One with a size 10 hook and a trout magnet, which the trout magnet, because it's thin, exposes more gap. If we find a bunch of crappie here, and sometimes there is, I prefer the size 10 hook with a little bit extra gap there. If there is a bunch of bluegill and long ear, there is freaking long ear on this lake, I have a size 12 hook with less gap. It's just much smaller jig, but I have 2 floats because I want to swap between them in the video and not have to retie. This will be uncut video. And then I'm not gonna start with a float. We're gonna start twitching. We're gonna start twitching and swimming and doing other stuff. because float is my second favorite. My first favorite is twitch and feel the bite in your hand without seeing it, because when you see it there is no surprise, but when you feel it without seeing it, anyway, topic for another video. I have the 1.5 number 10 with a black larva Z, which is, I'm gonna tell you now, this is my new favorite for twitching. I don't know why I never paired the 1.5 number 10 with a black larva Z. I don't know why. I always paired it with 125 and it works amazing. I'm gonna talk more in the video. I need to start casting in the water. I have the 1.5 number 10 with black larva Z. I have 125 10. Is this 10 or 12? Might be 12. 125 12 with a trout magnet. So slightly smaller jig. 2 twitching rods, but different kind of lures. I have a micro swim bait and a large swim bait. So we have 2 twitch rods and 2 swim rods and 2 float rods. Tell me this is not a fishing with a kitchen sink video. But we're gonna start with our favorite fishing method, which is twitching, because when the spot is mint and fresh, obviously the fish are easiest to catch, so you can catch them on the first few casts with anything you want. Then you make some noise, the fish see you lure a few times, they start to get wary, then you have to start switching. But yeah, twitching is my favorite method, the 1.5 number 10. I made another video that I didn't publish because there is no time to edit, but wow, huge turtle. Do you see this? I mean, this thing is huge. Look, surface like a Russian submarine. Look at this thing, and it's just sitting there. Here is our first fish, nut. Look how much water this thing displaced. Look at the swirl. There is something about turtles that grosses me out. Something kind of, I don't enjoy turtles. Here's our first fish, folks. It feels so good. My drag is extra because the weather is cold. When the temperatures drop, the performance of the grease changes. The drag usually slows down in the winter because the drag grease gets thicker. First cast, first fish with the 1.5 number 10 with black larva Z. This is a 10-inch crappie, black crappie. This lake has white crappie, but on this spot I never catch white crappie. Last week on the Paradise spot, he ate it good. Tell me that this thing was over here. Let's bump just one, just to give you an idea. He's 10.5, folks. Folks, he might be close to 11. This fish might be close to 11 inches. I don't know if I'm gonna keep fish today because my wife gets tired of cleaning fish very quickly. Last weekend I took home 2 nice crappie and 3 fat yellow bass. That was too much for her to clean. So maybe I'll take home today 1 or 2 crappie, and only if they're really nice. Only if they're really nice. But I was saying the 1.5 number 10. I kinda used this jig previously for I was pairing it with a Tickler Z. I was pairing it with tubes. I never paired it with trout magnet. And I was pairing with leftovers of 2-inch Kitek. I would fish the 2-inch Kitek with a 2-gram number 8 hook jig, the gold hook from Daiwa. Even this will eat. That was a mistake. I could have released you by now. Yeah, I would fish it, the 2-inch Kitek with the 2-gram number 8 Daiwa jig head. See, I caught only a couple of fish and the whole school moved. They feel something is not right, the whole school moved. But after the lure rips a couple of times and you can't use it on that big jig head anymore, I don't throw those leftover pieces of Kitek. I keep them on my tray, in my tray here on the boat. And they get dirty from transportation and all of that. Doesn't matter. But then when I fish a lake with small crappie, or I just want to use a small swim bait, even if small swim bait is amazing for big bluegill too. Not just for small crappie, but it's amazing for big bluegill also. I would get those small leftover pieces of the Kitek with only the tail left, and they would fit on the 1.5 number 10 just perfect. But for some reason it never occurred to me to pair the 1.5 number 10 with a Larva Z, and let me tell you, they pair absolutely phenomenally. Because the 1.5 number 10 has a little collar. I didn't want to make such a big chunk of lead a single continuous ball, because the ball would be too big. I just don't want one big piece of lead on a small hook. It doesn't look good to me. That's the problem I have with some jig heads. The ratio between lead and hook is not right. So I put it in the shape of a collar behind the head to give detail to the overall, installation. And that color blends with the Larva Z body so good. The black color blends with the black Larva Z so good. It looks amazing, and obviously it casts amazing because it's 1.5 gram. And the other thing is, yeah, that's why I start with my favorite method, because right now you can catch them any way you want. But later it will be tough. Later we're gonna switch to small trout magnet and float and dangle in top of their mouth when they don't want to chase anymore, when they're not aggressive. And we can use the other methods, but when they're aggressive, I prefer to feel the hit of a fish in my hand. Look, if you don't believe that fish have a very high opinion of this jig, too crappy already, look how deep. Do you think this fish was concerned that this might be fake? Do you see second fish in a row, except the bluegill? Do you see how deep it is? This jig is deep, folks. This fish did not see anything suspicious. When it looked at this jig, it did not see anything suspicious. I mean, even if you're a human and you have kind of a little bit older eyes, the whole thing looks like a bug. Even you can't tell where is the jig, where is the lure. Is it immediately obvious? And then the eyefish clips, I need to make a video. I paid a factory, made my own clip design. I made it matte black, not shiny, but matte black, to match the matte black of my jig heads. And for some reason I couldn't find a cheap factory. The factory that I found to manufacture my design charges me more money than what I can do to buy the other clips that you can find on Amazon. Not from a factory. I don't know who makes those. I cannot find the factory who makes them. But even if I buy them from a reseller, they're still cheaper than what I pay for my jigs at my factory. It's not my factory, I mean, it's just a contract. I don't have my own factory. I make contracts with these guys. But I don't know if it's the matte paint or something. Maybe the wire comes, maybe when they buy the wire, it comes with the black nickel color. However, I don't like anything shiny. I don't appreciate the black nickel color, it's reflective. So I told them, you have to, oops, just made a sale. I told them my clips need to be matte black. So they are matte black. I'm gonna make a video one day about them. I would love to sell them to you folks, but trust you me, you need 3 separate special pliers to install this clip on a jig head, because it's super small. It is very, very small. It's much smaller than the smallest one you can find on Amazon. And then the design is, there is nothing sticking. I wanted my clips to be smooth. They don't have a wire sticking out where you can just slide the jig head on. You have to open it first. You have to open it, you have to put it in, then you have to close it. And the whole thing, the whole procedure you're doing with a tiny, tiny clip. It's so difficult to hold. It's difficult to even see without good lights. It's difficult to hold with your tiny stuff with your fingers. And I don't want unpleasant user experience. I don't want to sell these things. I can make a video showing you how to do them and then sell them to you. And I say, yeah, just do what I show you in the video. And get a bunch of negative feedback. I don't want that. Man, these, how did we get tangled here? That's the problem with, man, this might be too early of a death. The problem with these soft lures is they go around, folks, the tail flaps and grabs onto something. Look, it's double hooked. It is very frustrating when the tail is not straight and it's kind of wrapped around and hooked, to figure out how is it wrapped around and hooked. But anyway, I don't want to sell my clips and people get completely frustrated and get negative experience. Positive experience is very important for me. Because I'm not here to make $10,000 from some kind of product and be done with it. I want to build a little business. So maybe one day I can retire and just I can live with this little business. So I am looking at the long term and doing some sacrifices temporarily. I hope it's temporarily. Just to grow my business. I'm gonna tell you a few things. If you watch the rest of the video, I'm gonna tell you a few things about the business and how it's going currently. Look how many small bluegill we caught with the 1.5 number 10, which is, if you compare the 1.5 number 10 with the 1 gram number 12 with a trout magnet, this is a 6-inch bluegill. This is not a small overall package. The jig head is larger than the 1 gram jig head. The hook is larger than the size 12 hook. And the Larva Z has a fatter body than the 1 gram, than the trout magnet. So overall, this jig head is larger than the 1 gram 12 paired with a trout magnet. So if you are catching small bluegill, you need to go with the 1 gram 12 with a trout magnet because it's easier to inhale. But if everything looks supernatural, and the fish are not suspicious, only if, these conditions hold, it has to look natural, so the fish is not suspicious, then they will open their mouth to the max and inhale this big meal. And you have to know, every time a fish is trying to eat a big meal, it's taking a risk. You don't look at it this way, but the fish take a risk when they try to eat something big. Because what if you can't swallow it and it gets stuck in your throat? So to catch small bluegill on a big lure, it has to look nice. And this guy looks as natural as pretty much anything. Look at this. Look. I don't want to turn around, but a little bit of fog. Just absolutely perfect conditions. Maybe we need to change direction. We did a few casts with the jig and already slowing down. Something right here in front of the boat. Yeah, we need to change direction because I know there is crappie here, but but when I see these big clouds of fish, I know, yeah, there's going to be a good bite, but it's going to be small fish. And if you watch a replay of the video, the first few fish were crappie. After that, mostly bluegill. I don't know, I need to cast to a kind of different group of fish. Can we cast 45 feet that way, roughly? That's 55 feet. That's the thing with the 1.5, with these super ultralight rods, it compresses the blank as long as you don't have an extra fast action. If you have extra fast action rod or something with a solid tip, you ain't gonna compress nothing. You're gonna be casting with the tip and playing the fish with the tip, and that's it. You are fishing with a tip. The rest of your rod is there just to hold the tip for you. But if you have a good rod, this 1.5 compresses the blank, then the blank reverse catapults, assists you on the cast. It's amazing. And one thing I was saying before, but I can't follow my thoughts, I get distracted. The 1.5 has a bigger forehead. If you get the 1 gram and the 125 jigs, 2 taps but no takers, you'll see that the 1.25 jigs have bigger forehead than the 1 gram. Forehead is flat spot on the front. Just because you have more lead and bigger head, and you can make a bigger forehead. I think this was my first cast without a fish to a new spot. I thought this might be crappie here, but because if I cast over there, there is fish, but they seem to be small bluegill. But I'm gonna cast back there because at least we're catching something. But the 1.5 number 10 has a bigger forehead. And this big forehead is what creates the sensitivity. When you tap, the line, when I'm tap, when I'm doing this, during the twitch, the line is pulling the jig head. If this is the forehead, the line is pulling the jig head exactly on a 90-degree angle from the forehead. So you can imagine if the forehead is at 90 degrees, it's exactly perpendicular to the direction of the movement. That creates a resistance that's difficult. That's the opposite of aerodynamic. And that resistance, you can feel the resistance in your hand. If you twitch like this, you're gonna feel it so crisply. You can feel, if you have good line, of course, and good rod, you can feel, folks, the twitch almost like a bite. It's very crisp because the forehead of the jig head creates resistance. It's difficult to move it fast through the forward in the water with this flat forehead. It's just difficult. This is what gives you sensitivity with such a tiny jig. With a big heavy jig you can feel the weight without anything. But when the jigs are so tiny and light, you don't have the weight to feel anymore. You can't feel the weight. So if we can't feel the weight, how do we feel the jig? Well, we can still feel the jig if the jig makes resistance when going through the water. That's the idea of the flat forehead on the front of my jigs. So you can feel them on the twitch. They're not designed to be for swimming. My BG1 jigs, I've said it in a few videos, but never in the actual product description. My BG1 jigs, folks, you can use them for anything, obviously, but they are designed for twitching because that's where my heart is. That's what I find most enjoyable. They're designed to give you sensitivity on the twitch. Actually, one downside of tungsten on a small jig heads, tungsten is very expensive, molds are expensive, the jigs everything is very expensive from tungsten. See, the twitch bite died away, but I lost my thought. But one day I hope to have enough customers so I can make tungsten molds and we can make tungsten jigs. But I'm not gonna make a 1 gram tungsten jig. That doesn't make sense. That doesn't make sense, folks. Why would you make a 1 gram tungsten jig? That's completely counter, oh, no more tail. You people are telling me that this plastic lasts forever. No, it only lasts until they bite the tail off. And these little bluegill, they bite the tail off very easy. Okay, well, we caught enough fish with the 1.5 number 10, I guess. What are we gonna do now? Let's take a quick scan and decide. We're gonna try a float or swim a little bit. Let me try. I don't think it will work out with the float, but let me give it a cast. The fish is kind of far. This is 30 to 35 feet starting. Now we got the distance. This is 45 feet. We got the distance. I don't know if we got the depth though. I don't know if we got the depth. Because the fish is deeper. They're like 6.5 feet. But I cannot fish a slip float that deep and cast 45 feet. I'm like 4.5, maybe 5 feet deep. So the fish would have to come up 2 feet higher. And if they're hungry, they will. But these don't. It looked too far and too deep for float. But I thought I would give it a shot. See, I can't see my jig on live scope. I don't know what's up. Is this a bite? That's why I don't even try this. I can't see. Oh, bite. Bite. I cannot find my tiny jigs on live scope. Maybe it's my live scope. Maybe that's why people are using these 1/8 jigs with the big wire and the big 2-inch Bobby Garland lures that are kind of easy to see on live scope. My tiny stuff is very hard to see on live scope. Sometimes I can see it if like everything is perfect, but most of the time I can't. Yellow bass. That's too much fight. Now I don't know if I should cast again. It was tough. That's a good yellow bass to eat. We ate those yellow bass and they were delicious. They were delicious, especially if you eat them fresh and not freeze them and defrost them, because the yellow bass meat, when you defrost it, if you freeze it and defrost it, gets kind of mushy. I guess all of meat when you defrost it gets kind of mushy. It's too early for the float. Float is my last resort. Float is when they don't want to take anything anymore. I will get the float and just dangle right on top of their head and just tease them. The float is, if you can reach fish with the float, I think you have the highest probability of triggering a bite. Problem is you can't always reach them with the float. But if you can and you just dangle on top of their nose, what fish is gonna say no? You're just dangling right on top of their nose. They take a nip. They don't feel any resistance. And then they swallow the whole thing. The other thing I don't like right now for float fishing is there is no wind at all. So it just sits in the air, and that's not normal for food to sit in the water column and not sink, not move, not do anything. So I have to do the action, and I can do the action, but I don't know. So over the years I've noticed if there is zero wind at all, you need some very active fish. Wow, they tore up the brand new trout magnet, look. Well, it was not brand new, but I guess that lure is done also. So we used up the 1.5 number 10, the trout magnet here, after just one fish. Let's do the big kaitik while there is still some bigger fish. This is the 2 gram number 8 gold hook from Daiwa. There is a lot of stumps here, so very likely to snag. Yeah, so it's good to try this. Cast this way. I use this where I expect I can lose them. But this is a tungsten jig head, and I was saying that it doesn't make sense to make a 1 gram tungsten jig head. Daiwa makes them, but I find them, they don't work good because the 1 gram jig head is so tiny and it's already light. It weighs only 1 gram. So you're not gonna feel the weight. Maybe you can feel the weight, but only if there is no wind and you have a very thin line, then yeah, you're gonna feel the 1 gram jig head, but not as crisp, not as nice. And then the jig head is so tiny that you just don't have space to make a flat forehead like I do with my own jig heads. There is no space. So when the jig head is so tiny, you can't work with the sensitivity business, with the resistance business. You can't create resistance to give you sensitivity. So on the big head on the larger sizes, 2 gram, 3 gram, then it's useful because when the jig head is so heavy, you're not worrying about sensitivity anymore. I mean, it's so heavy. If you cannot feel a 2 gram jig head with an ultralight rig, there's something wrong with your line or rod, or there's something wrong with your ultralight rig if you can't feel a 2 gram. You should feel a 2 gram jig even in the wind. You don't really need the flat forehead to feel the weight of a 2 gram jig. So you don't need to put forehead and all of that stuff. Actually, if you're using a 2 gram head, with see, we switched to the larger lure and we eked a couple extra crappie. Now if I wanted to put 2 grams, a 2 gram head on such a small jig head, that's the advantage of when this hook is not sharp anymore. So my finger is sliding. This hook is already circle hooked. It's sliding now. If I wanted to put a 2 gram head on this tiny hook and make it out of lead, it would be a huge hunk. It would be a huge hunk of lead. It would be too big relative to the lure. It would look bad. So when you want to fit a lot of weight on a small hook, tungsten is very useful. That's when you want tungsten. But on a tiny jig heads, very light jig heads, tungsten is counterproductive, folks. Why do I make my lightest jigs 0.6 and 0.75, the equal light jigs? I make them from, I don't even make them from lead. I make them, oh man, we got something big here and broke off. That's embarrassing. We got something big here and broke off. I just retied. That's embarrassing, folks. Maybe something with teeth. What broke off here? That was embarrassing. Let's see what broke off. Wow. Wow. My union knot broke off. Look. That is embarrassing. My knot broke off. Not the line, not the ester line. Not the thing. Well, the knots, you gotta retie them from time to time, and this was retied and fished quite a few times. I forgot where I was, so 3 of the rods are already done. And if I'm making an uncut video, I don't want to waste time retying. Let's try the 125 12 trout magnet. Twitch a roo a little bit with a small jig. Man, that was a good fish. I would have loved to land that. Good fight. Let me loosen the drag a little bit. I told you when the weather is cold, the drag, it gives extra resistance to the drag. But yeah, I make the jigs less than 1 gram from alloy that is there is no lead in that alloy, just because otherwise the head would be too small. If the head of the jig is small, you want the head to be the same diameter as the lure on the first place, otherwise it doesn't look nice. Second of all, if the head is too small and it is so light, you don't have any resistance. How are you going to feel this jig if you try to twitch it? If it's under a float, okay, but if you're trying to twitch it, how are you going to feel it? Well, almost caught a fish right here. Maybe I still will catch a fish right here. So this is why this is kind of not completely accidental. There is a little bit of thought behind this. Making the smallest jigs from lighter alloy makes the head a little bit bigger, so it's the same size as the lure. And when it's a little bit bigger, you have a little bit of space for forehead. And when you have a little bit of forehead, now you can feel, you can twitch, especially the 0.75 gram Eco-Light jig. Find me another jig from Japan. Here is a challenge for you. Find me any jig from Japan, whatever, the most expensive jig from Japan that is kind of 0.75 gram or even 1 gram, that you have more sensitivity than my 0.75 Eco-Light jigs. My 0.75 gram Eco-Light has big forehead. The size of the head is kind of big. So on the twitch, you can actually feel something. Talking about feeling something, I feel the twitch bite is about done. So maybe, I don't know, maybe it's time to go float. I don't know how we're gonna go float, to tell you the truth, either. Doesn't look good for float either. Unless I go release some rope and get a little closer to these fish, because I'm too far and they're too deep. I can cast a little deeper, but then if you're trying to cast 6 foot deep with a fixed float, you're not gonna cast very far. So maybe I need to get a little closer to these fish. But yeah, there is some things that you can do to improve the user experience when you fish with very light jigs that are otherwise impossible to feel when you twitch, even 1 gram. Sometimes I will fish a slightly heavier jig just so I can feel it better. I enjoy doing tap, 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 tap and feeling the jig. Tap, 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 tap. Yeah, these fish are kind of far. Let's make a decision now. How to pursue these fish. It's slowed down very quickly, folks. Maybe in this direction this is fish, I don't know. I'm seeing these baby dots that I know it's baby bluegill. But okay, let's try. Let's try to see. Is this baby bluegill? Oof, the 125-12 with a trout magnet, because the body of the trout magnet is very aerodynamic and has pretty high density. With a 2.1 pound ester, which is this. Oof, it casts so good. I like when I'm casting and the line is coming out through the guides without noise and without friction. And you can kind of just hear it just enough, almost like it's sliding through the guides, but there is no this friction when you try to cast like with a 3-pound line through these guides. These guides don't fit 3-pound line. You can cast, and sometimes you can cast far enough, but the sound that you get is I don't like that sound. I can feel it. 125.12. One crappie. See, look at this. I don't know how you can see. Look at the flat forehead on this jig. When the line is, you can see the line is right now exactly 90 degrees perpendicular to the forehead of the jig, to give you extra resistance. Yeah, listen, I wanna switch to the float, but I'm too far from these fish. So here is what I'm gonna do. Stay with me just 1 minute. I know there is glare. Man, I love fishing by myself. I have everything set up. It's like a little table. The edge of the boat is high, almost like a table. Everything is here. My batteries, my drinks. It's so comfy, and the carpet gives me coziness. I love fishing by myself, folks. With time, I've become very picky. I'm not gonna increase by much, just a couple of feet. With the years, I've become picky, folks, and I like what I like, and I am unapologetic. I don't care if what I like is... Let's not snag something here. I don't care if what I like is not green, if it's not cheap, if somebody doesn't like it, if it's not efficient. I don't care. I like what I like, and I fish the way I like. And if I lose some fish, so be it. Yeah, I think I can reach these fish here. Let's try. Let's try to dangle the size 12 hook. Oh man, this line is now up in the air. Let's put this rod down. We're gonna put a new jig head. See the 2 gram number 8 tungsten. We lost it, but it was already a compromised hook. Look at this background. Let's see if we can catch a few fish in a row with this background. There's some fish here, but they're small. Let's see. And there is no wind. Maybe I should twitch for just a few more minutes. Around 9 o'clock, usually you get some wind. There's a bite right away. Yeah, that's a small fish. That's a small fish. But the bite was good. He took it down and he never showed it back to me. He took the float down and it was gone. One thing I learned very quickly about floats, folks, is wow, these fish just one fish and they're gone. One fish, that was it. Floats is not a good way to make money, folks. The problem with the floats is, even if you have a good product, even if you have good margin in one unit of float, you need so many customers to make money from floats. Because floats are not like jig heads. Jig heads, you get snagged. I mean, every day you lose 2-3. But floats can last a really long time. If you fish with a boat, how do you lose a float if you fish with a boat? And everybody has a boat or a kayak or something. Maybe in a river you can't chase it down, but people go and recover them. Even when they fish from the bank, in the summer they go and recover them. And that's good. I'm happy that my floats are worth recovering. But people buy a couple of floats, 2-3 floats. All of my regular customers, they came and bought floats. They bought a lot of floats. Then when I released the 1.5 gram, they came and bought floats again. But that's it. Most people have a boat or a kayak, and they can recover the float if they snag. Even if you fish from the bank, if you do what I told you, you should not lose the float. If you fish from the bank in a snaggy area, what you should do is fish with a 6-pound main line and fish with a 3-pound leader on the jig head. So when you snag, the leader breaks, probably from the knot, which happened to me. The leader breaks, you lose the jig head, you recover the float. If you're not doing this and you're losing floats, well, if you cast the float into a bush, if you cast I guess you're not going to recover it. I'm talking if you snag something on the bottom. As long as your leader is thinner than your main line, but no matter how you look at it, if you calculate your costs over the whole year and you compare how much money you spent on jigs and how much money you spent on floats, you don't even fish with a float all the time. People fish with jigs 12 months a year. No matter how you fish, you swim, you twitch, you need jigs. But float, not every day you fish with float in the first place. And then they are very easy to recover. So at the end of the day, folks, even your best customers can only use so many floats per year. My buddy from Minnesota, he asked me to get like just one of every float that I have. So I sent him a package. He said, man, this is enough floats for the rest of my life. And that's true. I mean, I sent him like 20 floats and he has a boat. How are you going to lose 20 floats? So to make money from floats, you need to have like thousands and thousands, maybe tens of thousands of, even maybe hundreds of thousands of customers. So yeah, the float is, I make the floats because there is no floats like this, because I want them to exist, because this is the right way to do float fishing, and I want to create a name that I changed float fishing in United States. But let me tell you, I am not making money from floats, and I hope my business one day grows enough that I can make money from floats. I think Till makes money from floats because everybody knows them there in Walmart, and they sell so many that, yeah, they can make money from floats. But my business is so small that everybody already bought floats. That's it. Now I need to release new color or size or something. Or otherwise, I need new customers. But new customers with my small channel, I'm afraid I'm going to be an old man by the time my business is big enough to make kind of serious money. But let me say right away, I do appreciate what I have very much because it makes me happy, and the money is still significant. I mean, okay, I'm not rich, I cannot retire today, but I can pay my mortgage. That's something, right? If you make enough money from your hobby business to pay your mortgage, that's already something. Man, I caught 3 or 4 fish on this cast, and I lost every one of them. But float fishing is just not optimal, folks, right now. I need to switch again to, I don't know, swim, twitch, something. When the water surface is flat like this, just perfectly flat, they're not gonna come and touch it. Look, they're not gonna come and, nothing is moving. Why touch it? It looks dead. And I can move it, I can twitch it. I can twitch it and move it, but I mean, when you have a little bit of chop, it is so much easier to, sometimes you don't have to twitch at all. It's just drifting down with the wind and they're hitting it. Because the wind is moving the jig up and down. And when I have clip, I haven't fished float without a clip on the jig in years, even before I started my business. I would always, if there is one application where you kind of, I don't want to say need, because you don't need it, because you're still going to catch fish without it. No, I'm not going to even cast. It's a waste of time. If there's one application where you need a clip, is when you float fish, because look how easy it moves. Look how easy it moves. And when you have wind and ripple, this thing is going like this through the water, folks. It's going up like this. Otherwise, it's going like this, which is unnatural. That's not how stuff moves. Versus going like this. Yeah, we need to... I think the big Kitech would have been nice if I had it. Or the 1.5 number 10. Because I can cast far. Maybe I'll spend a few minutes to retie. Let's try this micro swim bait. Maybe that'll work. If it doesn't work, maybe I'll take 5 minutes to go and retie. But it will be uncut video. Which way to cast? Which way to cast? This way. Let's try to get... Oh, man, this 2.1 pound ester versus 2.3 pounds. Such a big difference. 2.1 pound of... If you're casting micro stuff, go for the 2.1 pound ester. If you're fishing for crappie and occasional bass, then 2.3 pound ester. Chapara, 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 and loader, no loader. Baby stuff, baby fish. There is still fish around, but they are wary and they are very small. Chapara. And really, 2 good hits. This micro Chinese. These Chinese lures, there is always something with them. I mean, this lure would be fine, but this one is actually too small. You have 1 inch and you have 2 inch. And there is nothing in the middle. It's actually too small. Yeah, business is doing just fine. One thing that gives me hope that my business will grow is the amount of spontaneous emails with positive feedback that I get from customers. I don't know if there was any way for that to compare with other businesses, but I will put my business against any other business, not even a fishing business. If you have the amount of customers that I have, which is, I'm gonna tell you, I have about, last time I checked, 1600, 1624, 1634 unique customers. And of them, I have about 1,000 with 2 orders. and of them, it's not exact science because you guys keep logging in with different emails and it thinks you're a different customer. It can't really recognize. But then I have 550 to 600 customers with 3+ orders, and these are the core. These are the people who keep coming. I have already 2, or I don't know if the other guy already. I have at least 2 customers with 20 orders. And I have so many over 10. I have so many customers with over 10 orders. So that's my core kind of shopping. But if you think about it, even if you count everybody with just 2 orders, 1,000 customers, you sell 1,000 floats. How much money can you make from 1,000 customers? Now jigs, they will keep coming for jigs, and they do, and I appreciate that. But floats, you sell 2-3 floats. Some of them buy more. I've had people buy 10 floats plus, but I think they are sharing with a buddy. They don't want both to pay the shipping fee, because I don't know, why would one person need 10 floats? How are you going to use 10 floats? I fished with, you're not going to believe this, but I have lost over the last 5 years of float fishing, and I was doing float fishing long before I started my business. I would buy them from all over the world because I would buy floats from Bulgaria. I just couldn't find float with the shape that I want, to be small enough, to have beautiful antenna, just to be finessey. Everything was big and ugly. Oh, these floats from England are so beautiful, body, everything is perfect, but they don't have nice antenna. The British, they hate big antennas because for them, the wind is blowing the antenna, and they do only match fishing in Britain. They don't need to see it. They drop right in front of their nose and the fish come there because they're fishing these overpopulated pay lakes. But for 5 floats, for 5 years of float fishing, folks, I don't think I have lost 5 floats. I've lost a few. I remember a catfish took it away, and I don't know where he went with it. I don't know where he went. And a catfish shouldn't take it away, but every now and then your line is compromised, or it will go down and rub into a tree to kind of rub into something and cut it. Accidents do happen. I think one time I lost, very weird. I kind of snagged on something and I pulled and the float sank but never came back up. It was very weird. Sliding float. How did it get snagged like this? And I could kind of still reach it, but I didn't want to reach like 3 feet deep, 2 feet deep, 3 feet deep for a float that was kind of old already. If I would reach, it would be not to create litter, not to save the float itself. But I don't think I have lost 5 floats over the last 5 years. That doesn't mean that I have fished with only 5 floats though. I have fished with at least 100 floats. Trust me, I'm not exaggerating. At least 100 floats. There is so much junk. If you look at my giveaway videos, which I still keep on the channel, I used to sell these packages. Whatever I don't fish with anymore, every package would have floats. I would give them away when I keep trying new stuff. Somehow you always favor the new over the old, even if the old is better, just because you're tired of seeing the same old color. You want a new color, new shape. I don't know. You know how it is. This is not working very good either. But yeah, floats is not a good way to make money if you're small. if you are small. You need good size to make money from floats. Jigs is much better, but what's better, even better than jigs, is plastics, because you lose more plastics than jigs. They get ripped, you put a new plastic on the jig. I need to make my own plastic. This will put my business on a higher level. Put my business on a higher level. And I have the design, but I need all my other projects to kind of be completed before I start working on a plastic, because I know the work on a plastic will be exhausting. The development will be exhausting. The changes will be exhausting, and everybody gets irritated at the end. Even though I pay them, people only want to do so many changes. Let me tell you, with the float, we had hard time. We were very close, but they got tired of me asking for more changes. And they thought maybe he will never order floats. We just keep making changes. And they don't make a lot of money from just making changes and new prototypes. They're doing all of this because they hope that one day I will give them a good order. But what if you don't? And I know the lure will take a lot of... Because the 3D design of a lure, if you think how small a jig head is, just one little circle, and I did so much work just to design the jig head, the lure will be... I want to complete all of my other projects, so I feel kind of fresh and I have some energy and time for this. But we're gonna make a small twitch lure that will fit my jigs like a glove. It will have beautiful colors. It will be easy to install. I don't think the fish will like it any more than the other lures. That's not something that, like, yeah, they're gonna eat my lure more than a trout magnet or something like this. But my lure will look better than a trout magnet. Will be more easy to install than a trout magnet. And it will have more action than a trout magnet. Maybe it will catch a few more fish. Easy to speculate. Folks, if I can't catch a fish even with the small swim bait, how am I going to catch them with the float? We did catch fish in a lot of different ways though. We caught a few fish twitching both the trout magnet and the big 1.5 number 10. If you rewind the video, I think the big fish we caught, the best fishing was the first 20 minutes with the 1.5 number 10 and the larva Z. Just trust me, if you have this jig, if you already have the black color 1.5 number 10, if you purchased it from me, just, I'm telling you, buy one pack of Zeman black color larva Z. If you have these jigs already, just buy one pack of Zeman larva Z. Even if you're not into twitching, if you're doing only swim baits, that thing looks so good together. And the body has just enough juice to to trigger occasional bass. If they're hitting a trout magnet, that black larva Z is a lot juicier than a trout magnet. If you fish rivers and creeks where fish are used to searching for bugs, telling you, the 1.5 number 10 with a black larva Z. All of you who already have, and that's a very popular jig head, virtually everybody has. Everybody who is a kind of a regular customer let's say 3 orders plus, already has the 1.5 number 10. Get the black larva Z. If you bought the silver color, get any of the other, not the black, get any of the other colors. The silver color also looks good with white. Just get a different color larva Z and try this. This thing is awesome for everything, folks. For creeks, I mean, talk about float fishing, because the 1.5 gram float are, I don't want to say too popular, because I'm happy when people buy them, but you guys are buying too many 1.5 gram floats. You should not be people who didn't buy any of the 1 gram or the 1.25 gram floats, are buying only the 1.5 just so you can cast farther. You should not. The 1.5 is borderline. I don't know if I'm going to make bigger float than that, because if I make it bigger than the 1.5 gram, you can just buy the thill floats, right? There is offerings, maybe they're uglier, but there is offering in United. If you want a big bobber, like an egg, there is plenty of offerings. There is no finesse offerings, but there is big ones. But you guys are buying. Can I find a different fish somewhere? I'm pretty much working with a bunch of bluegill right now. Let's cast this way. Yeah, I see. I didn't think the 1.5 would be so popular, because it makes more sound. When you cast it, makes more sound. You casting a bigger jig, bigger weight. 1.5 is definitely, I will say this, the wrong tool to use for bluegill beds in the spring. If you're planning on that, bluegill beds are never too far from you. You don't need to cast far. Using the 1.5 gram float with a 1.5 gram jig on a bluegill bed will cost you some fish. You will catch fewer fish. You will catch, I think, a lot fewer fish if compared to if you work the bed with a 1 gram float and a 1 gram jig. I don't know where to find a little bit bigger fish. I got so many taps on the last cast. Yeah, casting a 1 gram float with a 1 gram jig makes no sound. It just falls like a cricket in the water, just sup. And the fish are actually curious. What happened? Let me go check it out. Now, casting the 1.5 with a 1.5 gram jig, I don't want to say it will scare the fish, because I use them, I catch fish just fine. You use them, you catch just fine. But it's not for finesse float fishing, like fishing a bluegill bed. The sliding floats are like, if you fish from the bank and you want to fish for trout in the middle of the lake here, you want to cast very far, then you can use a sliding float and just with a 1.5 gram jig, just you can 50, 60, 70 feet if you have a long, if you have the 7.5 gram feet Daiwa press, you can cast very far. Or another application where I have used the 1.5 gram floats, where I didn't, because they're sliding, I didn't cast very far. I was fishing the mooring sails. I would cast it, let it sink, and just let the water drift it by the mooring sail, because with the sliding float you can let it sink 12, 14, 15 feet. So you can fish very deep with them. See, small bluegill. And I'm not making a lot of noise. Oh, that's the first fish I lost today, and it's totally my fault. I started kind of horsing them. At the end of the day, I always start horsing them. When you fish so deep, it doesn't matter if you make noise, right? But I wasn't even casting far, to, like I was casting like 20 feet to the mooring sail. But if you fish from the bank in front of those weeds that you see over there, well, first of all, if you fish weeds in front of the bank, you should do what realistic fishing is doing and never fish the weeds in front of you. When you sit on the bank, cast in front of the weeds that are a little bit ahead of you, a little bit to the right of you, or a little bit to the left of you, like 20, 30 feet, as far as you can cast the float, but don't get up all the way in front of the weeds and then cast in front of your feet, because your feet make noise, you make noise, you're gonna spook the fish. But if you're casting very close in front of some weeds on the bank, 1 gram is the way to go. Less noise, slower sink rate, for those of you who care about that. Slower sink rate. Different applications, and I'm surprised that so many people. I am selling a lot more let me put it this way. Now they're still buying the 125. That one is probably the most popular, but then number 2 by far is the 1.5. And the 1 gram, I don't know, maybe people have difficulty casting the 1 gram float. I notice realistic fishing is, I've given him so many floats. He has enough floats to fish the rest of his life too. And he's using the BG1 jigs every time he's doing ultralight fishing. But he is using his own floats. Those red, big bright red floats with the lead, they're weighted with the lead on the bottom, because they help him cast. And I think that people finding the 1 gram perhaps difficult to cast. It's not difficult to cast if you have 4 or 5 pound line and a 7-foot rod. But if you're fishing like him with I think he's casting with a 6-foot rod and with a 6 pound line, and that 6 pound Zebco line that he's using, that line is like 0.20, maybe more than 0.20, maybe 0.25. So I can understand why it will be very difficult for him to cast a 1 gram jig and a 1 gram float. If you don't have a designated float rig, it's good to have one designated float rig. In bass fishing, it's okay to have 15 separate rigs, but for ultralight fishing, that's frowned upon. A lot of the twitching and swimming you can do with the same rod, but for float fishing, it's good to have a longer rod. I don't care if you do sliding float or fixed float. It's good to have a 7 foot 6, a longer float, and a different reel. Different reel with a little bit thicker line. You want a little bit thicker main line. You want like a 4 or 5 pound main line and 2 or 3 pound leader. It's good to have. And the other thing is, the float rigs are actually cheaper, because you don't actually need to buy expensive rod. The float rods, the best float rod in the world is the $60 Daiwa Presso. At least to this day I have not found a better float rod. I use the Suare XR, but it's not better than the Presso. The other good rod for sliding float or fixed float if you don't fish deep is the 7-foot Okuma SST. I reviewed it, it's amazing. It's also an amazing float rod. But it's good to have a designated float rod, and then you can cast the 1 gram. I think we exhausted the potential of this spot. This is uncut video. aside from all of the business talk, you should take into account that this is how normal fishing from one spot goes, even with live scope. Even with live scope. At first it's very fast, no matter what you cast. But with time, even with a lot of rods and a lot of lures, even with live scope, it just slows down. The fish get shy and careful, and it's just downhill with time. Actually, I'm gonna end the video here. I don't even know what else to blab about. And this spot, I feel it's from here on it will be tiny crappie and tiny bluegill. So I want to hit a few coves, get some different background. Maybe over there, look at that beautiful background. Maybe let's go make a video over there. And this is long enough. It will take at least 1 hour to upload this video alone. But if you do watch the whole thing or most of it, hell, even if you don't watch most of it, thank you very much, because I still know you're going to watch more than a couple of minutes. Thank you very much, regardless of how long you watched it, folks. One last look of beautiful Tennessee. And I'm going to let you go. Bye-bye.